Welcome to the LACHSA Masterclass podcast. Today we are joined by the incredible Mr. Gregory Grano, director, cinematographer, and producer, working primarily on documentary films and shorts. Mr. Grano has a lot of experience sharing the beautiful intricacies of our work and the people in it through the film medium. Some of his works include The Friendliest Town in Idaho, Apiary,
Aviary?
Disrupt- Apiary, Disrupting the Silence, and American Bear, An Adventure in the Kindness of Strangers. Yet arguably his most incredible project is the one he is currently working on, but more on that later. Without further
Ooh.
ado, welcome, Mr. Grano. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm wonderful, Gian. It's so great to see you / hear you. And I'm humbled by that notion that I'm currently working on my greatest project. Ooh, that's
I would
exciting
say
to
so,
think
but
about.
we'll talk about that later. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Okay.
We'll keep you all in suspense out there in the abyss. To start, so you are a documentary filmmaker. When did you first get into film, and what drew you to the medium?
I made my first film when I was in sixth grade, and there was a social studies project, and I decided to be like a tour guide on video to introduce the class to the country I was doing a presentation on.
Mhm.
My dad filmed that, so I can't get full credit, but
Mhm.
it definitely was the starting point. I made a few other videos for class projects in middle school, and then started writing my own short films. And by eighth grade, I had a group of 8 friends that acted in movies that I wrote, directed, and edited all up until senior year of high school. And I
Mhm.
went to my sort of mainstream public schools. I didn't go to an art school. It wasn't something I even really thought about, honestly. By the time I was later into high school, I was curious about um, going to some kind of art summer camp or something like that. But for the most part, making films was something I was doing on my own. And again, with this group of friends, that was a really cohesive, wonderful group of people. And so I've sometimes wondered as an adult if it was as much about the social experience as it was about the creative experience, for us to just have something to do together every weekend, which was make these films, which wound up being several feature-length films when we were in high school. And it was, yeah, a lot of fun. So that was definitely my starting point. I went to NYU to study film, and I totally focused on narrative filmmaking while I was there, but shot my first documentary the summer before my senior year at NYU. And ever since then, I've leaned more towards docs than narratives.
For sure, for sure, for sure. Out of curiosity, was there ever anything you wanted to be besides a filmmaker, like especially in your younger ages?
Oh yeah, I think now that the through line and everything I wanted to be has to do with creating experiences for
Mhm.
people. But the first thing I wanted to be was a roller coaster designer, because I
Okay.
loved roller coasters as a kid, and I loved the video gamer. I played it on the PC, Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Oh,
Oh
it's
my
never too late.
gosh.
It's never too late.
Oh, thank you so much. You're right. Who knows?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so roller coaster designer, and then an animator, and then a writer, and yeah, filmmaker snuck in by the time I was in middle school, and also a musician and various versions of what a musician or composer might look like as well, which has certainly woven together with filmmaking for me at times.
That makes sense, especially with your love of cello. You're telling us about that in our semester last year, but that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
So, including in your high school time, you spent time in all the positions on set pretty much. So, which
Mm.
one do you prefer?
Mm. Um, well, I I guess I do feel like I like being a director first and foremost. I
Mhm.
definitely like having the vision that's going to influence the overall project, and having that level of essentially intimacy with the project from pre-production to production to post-production, right? When I'm on set and it's another director's project, I have loved being a cinematographer. That is really exciting to me, and I've been DP on a couple episodes of like docu-reality TV, and when I was in college, especially, was a DP on a couple short narratives. I really loved that experience. And I'll say the one other role I had, especially when I was in college, was being a boom op and production sound mixer,
Okay.
and
Nice.
definitely had a good time with that, but haven't done any of that since college. So yeah.
I really respect that too. Like I know as I'm going along, I'm definitely trying out all the different positions. And while I do prefer, I would say, being a producer, I'm still finding my way, and I'm getting trying a little bit of everything. So
Hmm.
it's good to know that even a professional filmmaker like you always had that time. But
Oh, absolutely. But I'm glad that you're trying everything out. And also, like, we as individuals change, right? So if we're going to evolve, there could be different things that we love doing at different stages in our life as
mhm,
well. So, yeah.
definitely, definitely. So focusing a little bit more on documentary filmmaking, especially. When it comes to documentaries, I'd assume funding becomes an even harder challenge. Do you have any advice for
Mm.
funding, particularly for documentaries or just for films in general?
Mm. Um, for independent documentaries, though I haven't been lucky enough to receive what I'm about to say, it seems to me that there are many funding opportunities when it comes to essentially a lot of grant opportunities and things like that are right now especially interested in docs that are going to address important social issues
Mhm.
and or uplift underrepresented voices, whether that's
Definitely.
the subject matter or the filmmakers themselves. And I think that is really exciting. And so I certainly see lots of opportunities like that when you can do searches for grant opportunities for documentaries. There are some that are state specific. So even in California, there's specific options, and then there's all kinds of nonprofits and foundations around the country and in other parts of the world, technically, that would have things like that. And some of them are also just for students or just for very young filmmakers as well. So it's all about kind of doing the research to find the right niche for where there might be funding that fits one's specific project. But that's what I see as the starting point. Um, I would also say, in a favorable way, docs often can have a lower budget than a lot of narratives
Mhm.
between having a smaller crew, maybe less equipment. Um, and that is something a doc filmmaker can use to their advantage to essentially get out there maybe sooner, do less fundraising, and or be able to do the kind of fundraising that might be more like crowdfunding. If you're raising a smaller sum than for a large narrative project, you could maybe put it together through a whole bunch of people giving you $10, $20 here and there, and I think that's also really exciting. Um, yeah, I'll I'll leave it at that for now.
No, for sure. That's good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kind of on a similar topic, then, would you recommend college for filmmakers? And if so, what a film college specifically, or not at all? Because I know this is definitely an important topic and one we've talked to with a lot of the guests actually, because it really differs.
Mm,
Right? There is
mm.
no really right answer. So
Yeah,
what would
definitely not. And different answer for every individual, right?
yeah.
I mean, in my experience, I'm extremely grateful I went to college and studied film. I definitely am. For me, I didn't have a formal film education beforehand, and going to college to study film gave me, so much technical insight, so much like film theory insight. And it also created a community of collaborators and people that inspired me. And there are specific classes that I had at NYU that still I'll think of often as like foundations for filmmaking ideas I'm still curious about, or I'll think of, the random little class project somebody made our sophomore year of college, and to them, maybe it means nothing now. It's not like it was their, I don't know, Sundance hopeful submission or whatever. It was just whatever, a class project, but it made a big impact on me. And seeing that and being immersed in that for 4 years in college meant the world to me. Um, I don't know what it's like to go to an arts high school like LACHSA and have an immersive film education and a community of potential collaborators already.
Mhm.
And it seems to me like I mean, when I've spoken to other LACHSA students about maybe going to college to study something completely different, that makes a lot of sense to me, because I could see how you might have a lot of skills that already relate to filmmaking, and then leaning into a different um, subject, a different area could be something that enhances your artistry, or like the topics that you want to be digging into as an artist. And or like I said earlier, I think a lot of us have different stages of our lives, and if a LACHSA student had filmmaking be like the priority of their life during high school, and then maybe they reach a different stage where filmmaking takes a backseat, I also think that could make a lot of sense. So definitely case by case basis. Another thing I want to add on that is um, I was teaching the last couple of years, in addition to LACHSA, at two community colleges in LA County. Well, one was in Orange County, actually. But that gave me a lot of insight, having not myself been a community college student. I loved getting to see what those programs offer. And I also think, especially on an affordability basis, community college offers so much and can be a great way to like dip your toes into all kinds of different subjects. If you can take a class for like, I don't know, it's often less than $100 for a class for a semester. It's like you can try out so many different subjects, or if you know what you want to study, you can often get like 2 years in and then transfer to a 4-year school. And anyway, so right now I'm a big advocate of community colleges, and I think that's a great fit for a lot of students.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know. For sure. So, you were talking about earlier how the filmmaking skills, even if we don't do film, like even in college, it's really important in our lives. So, and I totally agree, especially when it comes to even when it comes to producing. Like
Mhm.
communication is such a key element of the filmmaking business, but it can really help whatever you do in life. So, on that topic, have you had to use any of your filmmaking skills outside of film, including in
Mm.
maybe some of the things that you've been doing recently?
That's such a great question. I love your mindset around that already, thinking about filmmaking skills, being transferable to all kinds of different settings. For me, 100%. I think my work as an educator has a lot to do with things that I was interested in as a director, especially when you're kind of like, leading an experience that other people are part of. One of my favorite quotes about a director comes from the director, Krzysztof Kieslowski. And he said that a director's job is to help everyone else do their job. And it's so simple,
That's
and it's
so
so
true.
just like, yeah, it's just like sweet. And I kind of think that idea I also want to embrace as a teacher. Like a teacher's job can just be to help every student like do their work, or in a film class, of course, like make the most of whatever project they're working on. And I just love that. So that's an example where it plays out. I think every role that I've had in like a professional setting, filmmaking skills have played out, because it often has to do with collaboration, or bringing in multiple people's ideas and then making the most of what you can do together. um, I've done some like facilitating of discussion groups and like dialogue circles about various topics, and I think that also is similar to the collaboration towards that idea of just like helping everybody else have like the best experience for themselves. Yeah. And then as far as what I'm doing right now, yeah, I'm walking across the country, and I
Say what
had
now?
def Woohoo! I had a lot of ideas about what the experience would be, and I knew that one of them would be like cherishing interactions with other people, but that has become such a vital part of this trip. And that is a specific place where I see some of my filmmaking experience and documentary experience playing out. Even if I'm not filming somebody I'm meeting along the way, I think that my documentary experience has given me some skills to be, I don't want to say like a really good listener to somebody that I'm just meeting. So when I meet a stranger on this walk, I think more often than not, I can kind of adapt to their energy and help them feel comfortable with me. And very often I find myself with complete strangers telling me all kinds of stories very, very quickly, which is wonderful to me because that's a huge part of what I'm enjoying about this experience, and really feel like I'm learning about the world through all these individual stories that I just happen to come across. And then I'm also aware that there's plenty of other people where, like, if they were meeting this stranger, there might be, no way in which the two of them click, and there may be no storytelling at all. There's something for that I think I almost like am bringing to those interactions that has to do with like my history of interviewing people for films and that kind of thing, that I'm feeling is making people, again, more often than not, comfortable with me and wanting to share often a lot. And it's, which I just love. So yeah.
And as a director and also like, yeah, a leader naturally in conversations, how much does your cast and the people you meet dictate the story and pace of your film when you are directing films like American Bear? When you do have people that you're constantly conversing with who have their own stories to tell, but since you are making a film, you also have to guide the story. So what does that balance look like? How much are you controlling what they do or what they say versus them guiding the story of your film?
Hmm.
A little bit of
Really
a
interesting question.
confusing question, I know for sure. It's going in many directions, but
Hmm.
if you can take what you will.
I think so. I think I like it. It makes me think of a few different things. I mean, one is, I think my own approach to like documenting someone else's story as a filmmaker has moved more and more in a direction of being kind of open-ended and not controlling too much, in the sense that as an interviewer nowadays, I tend to just spend a lot of time listening and then like asking some follow-up questions, but really wanting it to feel like an environment where the subject can share as much as they want. And later in editing, those decisions will be made of what actually is serving the story. But
Mhm.
like essentially during production of an interview, I'm right now in my life wanting to just let them share as much as they want. I don't think that's always been the case. I think I've had other projects where there's more like, okay, I'm focused on essentially achieving this goal, right? Like sticking to these questions, sticking to, maybe a time limit of like, this is supposed to be a 30-minute interview. So, we got to stick to that, of course. Either way, I would say then in editing, I love to approach editing, particularly interview content, as though I'm putting people in conversation with each other, right? So my approach is usually to pull selects from each individual interview, but keep the selects again pretty like broad and loose, like not cut too much right at that stage. And then start seeing where are their themes and patterns, how do maybe multiple different subjects connect around various ideas, and then start putting them in conversation with each other by just putting those clips next to each other and starting to see how the flow is. And your question involved pacing. I think, yeah, how a subject is speaking has to contribute to like half of the pace of how they become edited, right? It would be really difficult to edit somebody who speaks really slowly with like a lot of quick cuts.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could jump cut through it, and that would be, but I mean, again, that would just lead to a certain effect. It could be a comedic effect, or it could be a, I don't know. I guess there's a different reason for anything, but it makes me think that what's up? Hello
Yo!
there.
What is going on, man?
Hi, Drew.
How
So
you
good to see
doing?
you.
You too.
I'm great. I'm
You,
really
you,
great.
you look great,
Yeah.
Greg. You look great. I
Thank
saw a
you.
clip the other day of you. You look awesome, man. You look like you're
That's really
living.
kind. Thank you. Thank you. I feel great. I'm west of Roswell, New Mexico. I'll get there tomorrow. I passed 1,000 miles yesterday. I feel like I've reached my like chapter 2 of this trip, where I'm just like, in it deeper, and I've got all my own rhythms, so now I can kind of actually like reflect a little bit more on some of what I'm experiencing inside and outside. Anyway, yeah.
Greg, I love it. I mean, thank you for doing this. Thank you for zooming in.
Oh, my absolute pleasure.
We'd love to do this even more. So please keep us abreast. The fact that you are in New Mexico, you walked through New Mexico already is an incredible accomplishment, Greg.
Hey,
I mean,
thanks.
so glad you're being safe. You look great. I can't wait to hear more. I'll let you get back to the podcast, but be safe. Keep it up, man.
Thank you.
We got you. I mean, I'm gonna try and meet you somewhere during the summer. Somewhere, I don't know where you'll be, but that'd
awesome, be amazing.
That's awesome.
Let's take a field trip somewhere.
Yeah, for real.
That'd be super cool.
I'll let you get back to it. Thanks, Gian. Greg,
oh my gosh,
to see you, man. Be safe.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
Okay. Oh, that was so fun. Nice.
I kind of want to bring you into the masterclass afterwards so people can say hi, but we'll leave that for later.
Okay.
We'll definitely do.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly where I was, so I don't know. I said plenty to that question. Maybe.
Yeah, no, that was amazing though. and you really do have to. It really does come down to editing. I totally agree because especially with docs, it can be so unpredictable. I know I've talked to a few filmmakers who have faced the same thing, and I have whenever I'm doing that every so often. But how do you deal with that unpredictability? Like how flexible do you have to be, including with having more B-roll?
Yeah. Well, I think in my own experience, I've had two very different approaches to essentially like how I'm creating parameters for the project. So I've had experiences, including like making American Bear, where there's a really, I think, clear understanding of what the story is that we're looking to document and what the themes are that we're going to be paying attention to. And that's going to guide what B-roll we're shooting. It's going to guide the interview questions. It's going to guide when do you press record, right? Because if you don't have a story and themes in mind, you might feel compelled to like record absolutely everything. And especially if you're going to be filming something that's like an experience or it takes place over time, like an event that's like a 3-day event. You don't want to film 72 hours of footage, like probably. So you need to know what you're looking for. Yeah. And that's going to help you once you sit down to edit, that you don't, have just like such a wide potential mess of content to then have to figure out where is the story, So you need to know some of it in advance. That being said, I've also had a couple projects, shorter projects, and more in the last couple of years where I'll find myself filming with a little more openness and less of a plan. And then I do just find the story in editing. So I'm saying like the opposite of what I was just saying. But I have found that to be really rewarding, especially for a project that is more, I would say, like solo or like an individual project for me. Working with a crew, I think it would be more challenging to do what I'm now saying. But for a project that might be like in our class, the personal essay film, something that's more just like for the filmmaker themselves, I have found that I've done some things where I'll film without knowing exactly what the story is going to be, but just when I feel almost like intuitively, I want to film this moment. And then at a certain point, I'll sit down with whatever footage I think corresponds to the project I'm now going to edit. And I will find that the editing process is almost like a visual diary. And I get to play with like my own reflections. And again, putting visuals or, sound bites or anything in conversation with each other and seeing what that yields. And I have loved that. That's led to somewhat more experimental doc projects from me in the last few years, but I've found them very, very personally and creatively rewarding. So.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So, docs have undergone a big shift over the last few years, and really the media as a whole. YouTube and TikTok have started to blur the lines between documentary and vlogging per se. So, what's your opinion on the shift and how maybe it opens up the medium to more perspectives? And maybe what are the key differences between the two as of now?
Hmm. That's a really interesting question that I think I'm personally learning about on the trip I'm on right now, because I've surprised myself a little bit by posting sort of like more on Instagram than I expected, but then also like I'm recording a bunch of things that I'm not posting anywhere right now and that I want to edit later. And it's been weird to sort of think about, what's guiding those choices? Like you're saying, like, what's the difference between vlogging and doing something for social media versus something we want to name as documentary? And I certainly like the aspect of social media that is democratizing media, where anybody's story can be out there and seen and, affirmed or whatever. At the same time, I have a lot of respect for, someone being a student of filmmaking, whether it's literally like at LACHSA or at college studying film, or it's just having like an interest in knowing, again, film theory and structure and things that are going to probably elevate your project from, oh, I set up my phone in my bedroom and I'm just talking to a camera on my phone, versus I'm really being thoughtful about the visual storytelling that's going to create a more layered experience for the viewer. And maybe that's what it comes down to. It seems to me like a lot of social media content and vlogging content it's got like one layer. It's like, just, this is what I want to tell you, boom, this is what I want to show you, boom. Whereas I think something I would call a documentary film is going to be more nuanced, essentially, where there's going to be imagery and sound design that are all going to create a more just layered experience for a viewer to get more out of it, whether it's get more immersed in the story or walk away thinking about much more than I would say most vlog content offers.
Totally, totally. I totally agree with that. I think that's something we have to learn to understand and respect and possibly use that going forward, especially as filmmakers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, now getting a little bit deeper onto what you're actually doing right now. In fact, we haven't really said it outright. We've like mentioned it a lot, but would you like to like outrightly tell us what you're doing right now, Mr. Grano?
Sure. I'm walking across the United States. I started on January 21st, 2023, south of San Diego. I wanted to be close to the border of California and Mexico and the Pacific. And I want to end where Maine meets Canada on the Atlantic. So gradually making a diagonal across the country. I'm pushing a bike trailer that has all my stuff in it, and that trailer now is named Lefty and is my like constant companion. And yeah,
I would say a right-hand man, but I guess it has to be left-hand this time.
Yeah. I also don't know Lefty's gender. So it's interesting.
Oh, I didn't mean that
right
way.
hand.
But
No. I know right hand man is just like a phrase, right? But it's been really interesting because I have found myself wanting to use pronouns with Lefty, and I haven't determined Lefty's pronouns. And it's really, I know maybe it sounds silly, like I'm overthinking it, but
no.
It's funny. It's gotten me, like, Lefty feels like a presence because I'm truly with them again. Like, I don't know what's quite the right pronoun right now, but anyway, I'm with Lefty constantly, and so I do feel this sense of like they've got a personality, and and I appreciate it. Yeah, so
cool. No, for sure. So what inspired you to do the walk? Like, did your experience on American Bear help the prospect make it more realistic?
Definitely. Yeah. So I had done some other road trip projects around the country and knew that I loved that, knew that I loved interacting with strangers, knew that I loved kind of a social experiment. So American Bear is a featured doc in which my former partner and I relied on strangers for a place to stay every night of a 2-month road trip. And yeah, that definitely is like a precedent
Yeah.
Preceded? Yeah, yeah. It
Precedent,
precedes
yeah. I said
what I'm
precedent,
doing
yeah.
now. At the same time, like other inspirations are, I definitely have a love of walking and hiking, and have done some long distance hikes, some sections of the Pacific Crest Trail, and yeah, decided that this was an experience for me to see the breadth of the country at a totally different pace than I ever have before, and put myself into kind of this path of, again, who am I going to meet along the way? What am I going to see along the way? What are the challenges I can't even predict that I am going to overcome along the way? All of that is exciting to me. I kind of feel like I'm my own subject in some kind of documentary, even though I'm not exactly documenting it all or something. It's more, I'm thinking of what we've already spoken about, and I was using language about like the parameters of the story. I kind of feel like on this walk, I've given myself parameters that are, here's my route, and here's what I have with me, and here's, I've got a purpose, which is like get to Maine eventually. But within those parameters, there's tons of freedom of what's actually going to happen on a daily basis. Where am I going to stop? Who am I going to meet? Who's going to pull over? This happens pretty often. Who's going to pull over while I'm walking down a road just to chat with me? And then where does that conversation go? I mean, I really love that. Yeah.
For sure. So what people have you met? Or maybe animals, perhaps? And what have those connections meant to you?
Yeah, I've met a lot of people with a lot of offering a lot of generosity to me. I've been invited to stay in some people's homes. Some of that has been arranged in advance, like through connections, and I'm also using a website where people like have a profile to host usually long distance bicyclists. So I am not a bicyclist on this, but I'm anyway similar enough that I've had some good luck meeting people there who are open to hosting me. But I've also had other instances of that where, for example, somebody just a couple days ago pulled over next to me and gave me a homemade meal. This woman said, I saw you walking yesterday. I figured today you'd still be headed in this direction. And I thought, I bet that guy's hungry. So let me make him some food. And so she just gave me this homemade meal and a couple, like a bottle of water and a bottle of soda, just like
So
her
nice.
version of, yeah, here's lunch, and it was so nice and meant so much to me. Yeah, there's been a number of times like that, just somebody kind of offering something while I'm walking. And then I've also, when I go through a town, I'll often go to a restaurant and have a nice meal, or well, a hot meal compared to what I eat when I'm on the road by myself. And I find I often get into really great conversations with like the wait staff or, whoever I get to meet in that setting. Yeah. And then there's been a couple animal encounters. I would say because of the nature of this walk being on roadways, I see way more dead animals than live animals, which is also really interesting, honestly, because one of the things I'm thinking about throughout the trip is like the impact of humans in general on nature, and roadways being a really specific example of that. And between the number of roadside crosses that I see memorializing a person that's passed away and the amount of dead animals that I see on the side of the road, it's really like a sobering idea of like just how literally deadly roadways are. While at the same time offering infinite conveniences, and I'm walking on roadways constantly, and I'm grateful to have a path ahead of me. But anyway, there's a lot of pros and cons and maybe paradoxes about that which is so wonderful and convenient about what humans have created, and I find myself thinking about that a lot.
For sure. What struggles have you faced? Because I know it's definitely an enlightening experience, and I'm sure an amazing experience. It's still hard, I'm sure. So, what struggles have you faced along the way, in terms of maybe lack of food, or maybe maybe you lost your way at some point? What have you faced, and how did you get through it? Maybe how did you use your film problem solving skills?
Okay, film problem solving
Oh, you
skills.
don't have to answer it with
Let's see.
that.
No, that's an interesting. I'm going to try to bring that in. I mean, the first thing that came to mind, partly because today is pretty windy. Um, the most challenging weather I've had some hail and a little snow and rain, but the most challenging weather was actually a day about 2 weeks ago in New Mexico where there were such high winds, it basically caused a sandstorm. And I was not in a town, I was kind of remote. And I wound up sheltering under a bridge where there was a road going over a railroad. So there was a bridge, and I was able to go down there and basically like camp out. Well, not camp out, sorry, it was daytime, but like hunker down next to this railroad track and be out of the worst of that sandstorm for about 3 hours, which for me feels like a huge like break in my day, because I take breaks throughout, but it's like, 15 minutes here, 30 minutes there. To just sit and kind of twiddle my thumbs for 3 hours and wait out that weather was kind of a challenge, but also in the long run something I really appreciated, because it like forced me to rest in a way that I think was necessary, and was also kind of this nice reminder for me of like the power of nature being so much bigger than myself, and that I can't always just like push through it. There are things that we need to shelter from, and we need to like rest from. Yeah, I'll share one more challenging experience that I had recently. Was I was hosted by two people who were very, very kind to me and kind in hosting me for the night in their home. But they had, I would say, some substance abuse issues, and also were very not in a healthy relationship, I would say. And as a guest in that home, it felt very uncomfortable. It made me feel worried for my own safety a little bit, but for like kind of their safety and their situation much more. I felt concerned for them. And I think,
I'm so sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you.
yeah,
One
yeah,
second.
yeah.
Do you mind if we end the meeting and start again? I know they are on a limit.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
well,
okay, okay.
if you
So
remember
call back to
Zoom,
the same link. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, I will. Okay.